Is it visible? Hello, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Is it visible to you all?
Yeah, already on the screen, but not visible.
Yeah, sir. Sir, it would be visible because
So
all
you can,
slides are
yeah.
combined.
Okay, yeah.
How is this now? Sir, is it right now?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, may I start? Hello, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. So, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. And
Walaikum salam.
today,
Okay, you could start now.
no. Hello, sir.
Hello, yeah.
Sir,
Hello.
should we start?
Yeah, so you can start now.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So, as I already mentioned, all of you that today Sadaf and I will be presenting about the chapter 4, and the chapter 4 is the name of chapter 4 is about the human learning, and in human learning we will actually. By having gone through our overall chapter, I noticed that the chapter is divided in some of the most important four theories which are given by the different psychologists, and there are also universal learning principles in the chapter, and lastly we will be focusing on the aptitude and intelligence, the situations are present in the chapter. So these are just a little bit outlines about the chapter. With this, I am going to start with the two terms that are in front of you in these slides: learning and training. I would be giving you the examples practically because this is one of the most important chapters of overall book. I do also consider that in this chapter there are some basic theories which we should know as the student of linguistics. So in this chapter, when we start from the two terms learning and training, here we come to know that a number of questions are rising in our mind. that whenever we think to train some of the students, or let's get an example that whenever we are going to train dog, one of our dog, which is pet animal in our house. So with this, when we are going to train that, a number of questions are raising in our mind, that how would we train that, or accept that dog. When we talk about the human beings learning, there are also a number of questions in our mind, such as that how human beings actually learn, and what are their principles, and what kind of theories or learning acts are being applied for the human beings learning. So with this all, I am going to give you example that if I personally, or you are going to personally train your pet dog at your house, and the situation is this: you are going to train the dog for the catching frisbees, and in certain distances, the distance is somehow 30 yards. So what will you need to know about that your dog, and how would you train, how will you train that your dog? So for this, you will go through a kind of a process, and that process will involve you into the 4 basic steps, which are these are the steps. Yes, in number 1 step, you will have an entry behavior, and in entry behavior, you will have some of the basic questions, such as you will be asking that what your dog already knows. Is it talented or not? How would you train that? Are its abilities, drives, needs, are the motivations and limitations too? Such kind of questions you will be raising in number 1 step. And second step is about the goals of the task. This is how where you will be settling your desired destinations or the specific objects. And in third step, you will the third step namely is known as the method of training, and in this is namely is mentioned, it would give you the direction based on what you know about the entry behavior or the goals of the task, and what kind of training simply you are going to give your dog, or how would you go about the training process. And in the last step, you that is known as the evaluation procedure, and in this step, you would determine whether or not the dog had indeed learned what you set out to teach, or whatever you have trained, or was there any result or not. In the end, you will be evaluating such kind of process, and you will be knowing, you will be thinking about the overall settled target, or you may say simply you will be focusing on the results. So this is just background about the learning. And have you ever thought that what is the definition of learning? Actually, the simple definition that was present in the book was the definition about the learning was that acquiring or getting knowledge of subject or skill by study, experience, instructions, is known as a learning. So with this, there are a number of psychologists, or the theorists, even the scholars who defined about the learning, that what is they give so many definitions about the learning. But in this lecture, we will be just focusing, as I earlier mentioned, that there are theories which are given by the different psychologists. So we will focus on the 4 psychologists whose theories are given in the book. Those psychologists, namely the first 2 psychologists, focus on the Paul, who are known as the Paul and Skinner, and they focus as the with the point of behaviorism. And one is replacing as the sense, or the giving one who's a psychologist is giving the direction of the cognitive sense, and the name is mentioned as Asbel. And lastly, one is a contrast psychologist who is contrast psychologist who is known as a Rogers, and we will be also going with his theory. So moving further, we are focusing on first and foremost the first theory, which is given by the Pauls, that is known as the classical behaviorism. In it, there is the is in front of you. Some of the points are written that there is the classical conditioning. How and what kind of process is involved, what kind of learning process is given to the dog in dog training. So before moving to the situation, actually let me tell you that the Paul was actually a Russian psychologist, and he conducted a number of experiments, and he also has done a number of he also has written some of the books. But with this, just giving you an example that when he was giving example of that situation, that classical behaviorism, he just defined a dog about the situation of the dog, that he trained a dog to salivate to the tone to the tone of the bell, and he was he labeled that conditioning, that when he was just focusing on the that situation and giving this situation, he focused and just label overall this situation when he gave the training as the conditioning, classical conditioning. And in learning process, the formation, when the process of learning takes place, he considered the classical experiment as the uh, as the formations associations between the stimuli and reflexive responses. And with this, how did he train? Actually, in the classical experiment, he trained the dog by repeating some occurrences. He associated the bell, you can say that stone, with the food, until that dog acquired that response. You may say, in other words, the response was all about the conditioned response. So he repeated those occurrences until dog gets. When he used to ring that bell, and the dog was just used to salivate, as the dog was thinking that it had a sign or an indication for the food, because Paul was associating the tone with the food. So this is what this is called the classical experiment. And with this, we with this experiment, with this Paul's experiment, we got one of the most important terms, which is founded by the G.B. Watson in 1913, and known as behaviorism. And furthermore, furthermore, in in other in other sense, we just gave the sense, or the one kind of you may say that thinking that how to train the dog by repeating some of the actions or occurrences he trained the dog. So indeed, it is also one of the matter of the facts that when we think of the practice, or the when we think of the such occurrences, and when we think of the behaviorist tradition, we do come to know that in many years, the teaching process was affected with the behaviorist theorist. And the second theory is about the Skinner's operant conditioning. And Skinner actually was called the neo-behaviorist. He was called neo-behaviorist because in 1938 he published his book named with the behavior of organisms. And with this, with writing this book, he made himself as one of the famous psychologists of the United States. And with this contribution, a number of other psychologists called him because here the contributions added as a unique name as the neo-behaviorist, and because of this, that here the different he presented some of the different dimensions in the field of behaviorist psychology. And Skinner's operating condition attempted to account for the most of the human learning behavior. And operating conditioning is behavior in which is simply operating condition can be defined in the words as it is the behavior in which one operates in which one is operated in an environment and where kind of stimuli is de-emphasized, or you can say that that is not very compulsory. So behavior which is reinforced tend to be repeated. It was all about the those occurrences as already we gone through the dogs example, and the behavior which is not reinforced tend to die out or extinguish. So this was clear. In it he described three types of responses. Number one was the neutral operands, and number second was the reinforcers, and number third was the punishers. Yes, the impact was huge on in the field of psychology because Skinner viewed both of the language and language teaching that dominated the both field as foreign language methodology and the first language acquisition too. So the third theory, which was about the summation theory, and it was all about the learning. And this theory is actually is the one of the most important theory also in the field of psychology. And here we are given some of the definitions and also the examples about the learning processes that how do human beings learn. And in it we are given types of learning. One is root, and which is compared with the other type of learning, that is meaningful learning. In further detailed description I will be telling you, but the definition which was written and the situation is in front of you, that is presented in the slides, that learning takes place in the human organism through a meaningful process of relating new events or the attempts to already existing cognitive concepts or the prepositions. Actually, there Aspens wanted to give a sense that in types of learning, one type of learning is that where we are giving, we are just relating our previous information to the new information. Or in second type of learning, we are when we are not relating, we do not learn very well. So in it, the meaning is articulated and differentiated conscious experience that emerges when potentially meaningful signs are related to and incorporated within a given individual's cognitive structure. So it was this is the theory of summation theory of the learning, and in it, as I already mentioned, that two types of learning are giving. One is root learning, and root learning involves the mental storage of atoms having the little or no association with the existing cognitive structure. Such as the example is clear that learning a phone number. So this is what we do. Not associated. We are not associated when we remember. We are not in it. We are not associated with the structure of cognitivism. And secondly, meaningful learning may be described as the process of relating and anchoring new material to the relevant established entities in the cognitive structure. Yes, indeed, when we learn new material, we do relate in meaningful learning with the previously acquired, previously learned material or the structure. So the key distinctions between root and meaningful learning becomes clear when we consider the relevant efficiency of two kinds of learning in terms of yes, retention or the long-term memory. We remember some of the things we suddenly forget. So both are the distinctions of root learning and meaningful learning. Yes, here comes the systematic forgetting. How do that occur? You might be thinking in some situation that sometimes we remember some of the information, we suddenly forget that. In it, basically, retention of root material is influenced by a similar root material learned before and after the uh, task. And second point, in retention of meaningful learned material is influenced by relevant and commutable system in cognitive structure. So this is what when we relate the remembered material with the current scenario, we come to know that these are the problems, these are the root causes which comes in the processes of both types of learning, root and meaningful learning. So forgetting takes place in a more intentional and purposeful manner. It is the continuation of submission. In addition to this, there is the another term, and that is known as the cognitive burning. After this, and this is also given in the same theory. Actually, the cognitive pruning is the elimination of the unnecessary clutter and clearing a way for more material to enter the cognitive field. And the same way, the pruning at the ultimately allows greater and fuller growth. In other words, we can say that the cognitive pruning is the process of eliminating unnecessary clutter from the cognitive field. Sometimes we do not focus in some of the materials, or we do not repeat those far over the months. So this is the process. It has been eliminated. And the example is given over here: a child learning the concept of so hot it will burn. Suppose so, the first exposure may be he would recall as the child maintains the meaningful association with the direct or maybe the verbally. And after the exposure, after many exposures, after a lengthy process, the child forms the concept of hardness. So this is what we just give just concept. And yes, the burning stage is systematic. And in addition to this, the systematic forgetting involves the language attrition. Research it focused on variety of the possible causes for the loss of the second language skills. Some of them are lexical items or obler or neuro-linguistics blocking could contribute to forgetting. Another is Edson. A long-term forgetting can apply to the certain linguistic features such as lexical, phonological, the syntactic, and so on. And oscillation are some of the aspects of iteration that can be explained as the result of the acquisition process. There are also other common reasons or a number of root causes for language iteration center to the strength and conditioning of the initial learning. And yes, native language here attention is not just limited to the second language acquisition. As mentioned, it is also maybe in the other types of learning, or maybe in the native language forgetting, or the you can say simple word first language acquisition, but it may be in other sense, such which is given in front of you, that is subtractive bilingualism. Learners, whenever learners often use a second language, so whenever it is the matter object that when we learn first language, we leave some of the effects whenever we learn second language. After acquiring the first language, we leave some of the many aspects or many factors on the second language, are the target language. But whenever we are habitual of becoming the speaker of second language, there we see the process subtractive bilingualism. In it, we are giving a root cause in it we are giving the root cause of forgetting. So a minority group learning the language of a majority group, this may be a reason. And secondly, submission theory is a strong basis for the rejection of conditioning model and language teacher. And lastly, rote learning is effective in short term but insufficient for any long term retention. So this is, I hope, clear to you all. And let's move to the another theory, which is given by the Rogers. Yes, he was also learning, one of the famous learning psychologists of his age, and he had also so much followers during his days, and he was also a significant during his time. So Roger actually presented the humanistic psychology. In it, he gives the definition that about the human learning. As a psychologist, he defined actually some of the very important points. He mentioned that the whole person is a physical and cognitive, is primarily an emotional being. He actually yes, he actually wanted to present the kind of you can say the principles. Yes, it is the matter of fact that he carefully analyzed the human behavior, whether it was in general, including the learning process, or but with this, he also presented the 19 formal principles of human behavior. All of those 19 principles were phonological in a sense, and were perspective in contrast to the theory of Skinner. So he also focused on the teacher's behavior, and he also did some of the important characteristics about the teachers, that how should a teacher behave in the class, what kind of characters he should have while teaching in the class, or how he should behave with the students. So fully functioning persons, he mentioned this statement. He wanted to convey this message and live at peace with all of their feelings and reactions. They are able to reach their full potential. And ultimately, he wanted to bring a type of idea in the field of education. And the goal of education, he mentioned that is the facilitation of change and learning. As I earlier mentioned, he mentioned some of the most important points about the teachers. Among them, when I was going through the books, I was it was really interesting to know that some of the points are very important for the teachers. Yes, indeed, it is written in front of you that teachers are facilitators in his point of view. But with this, he also gives some of the other characteristics which were very important, such as he said that a teacher must be discarding of masks of the superiority and omniscience, or a teacher must be a genuine. And on the other hand, he also mentioned some of the other characteristics, such as he said that he should have a teacher should have the genuine trust, or he should have the kind of characteristics that is known as the acceptance, or he should be trustworthy individual, and he should communicate. Lastly, with other characteristics. Last but not least, he mentioned that a teacher should communicate in both of the manners, such as in openly and empathetically. So by giving such kind of characteristics, he mentioned the learning process. And yes, in the goals of education, he described the characteristics of the teachers. So moving further, in the last parts of the chapter, and there are also types of learning. After these 2 or 3 points, I will be calling Sadaf, but still some of the points are remaining. And types of the learning actually in the book were given by the Ghent in 1965. Those all the types of learning were 8 in number, and yes, by as we have gone through all of the 4 theories. 4 of the theories, two were focusing on the were from the Davidist, and 2 were from the contrast, and 2 were from the one was from the other and from the other manner. So all of these theories just give the different types of learning styles, or different types of learning. So actually, those all of the theories could not cover some of the theory lacked some types of learning. So with this, Genge 1965 identified 8 types of learnings, and those all of the 8 types of the learning. Can you listen me? Is it clear to you all?
Yeah, okay, quite clear.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So yes, with those all types of theories, the 8 types of learning are giving. One was the signal, second was the stimulus response learning, and third was the chaining type of learning, and fourth was the verbal association, and fifth was the multiple description, and sixth was the concept learning, seventh was the principle learning, eighth was the problem solving. So if we will look at it deeply on the every type of learning, we will consume much more time. So just giving you a sense in concise manner, the signal learning in general was about the some of the general response, some kinds of the was the signal learning actually was involving the uh, factors such as maybe the verbal or maybe the cognitive or maybe the emotional. It was all about the signal learning. And the second type of learning, which is known as stimulus response learning, actually was the evident in the acquisition of sound system of the foreign language. So in it, lexical like some of the lexical items are in a sense of the lexical items are being acquired, but but in the sense of stimulus response connection, because it is associated with it. And and the third type was the chain type of the learning, and it was also is one of the proof for the acquisition of the phonological sequences. And fourth was the verbal association. The verbal association was the disconnection actually between the two chains. One was the verbal and second was the non-verbal. And it was, you may say that maybe defined as the separate type of the other separate type of the language. And the fifth was the multiple discrimination. Multiple discrimination was associated with the second language learning. And sixth was the concept learning. And concept learning was involving a kind of notion that language and cognitions are interrelated. And the seventh was the principal learning. And the principal learning was actually a kind of, you may say that the extension for the concept or for the learning to the formation of one kind of a system in the field of linguistics. And the seventh, yes, eighth was the problem learning. And problem solving, or the in problem type of the learning. Second language learner continuously faced with the sets of events. And you may say that, in other words, in it we are given a kind of sense to think, or we are moving in the deep kind of thinking when we are finding or thinking of something or some objects somehow. So the second language, so all of these theories, all of these, oh sorry, types of the learning are actually divided in some of the different, you can say that what should be said, that in different sections. Five first sections were in focusing on the other types of the learning, whereas three remaining three were from 6 to 7 other. So can be sequenced in the cognitive term by means of the 8 types, is written on you and described already. So last but not least is are the three terms which are mentioned in the book. One was about the one is transfer, second is interference, and third is our generalization. These can be best understood as the several manifestations are on one principle of the learning, and the interaction of the previously learned material with the present event, learning event. Actually, these three types, these three terms have commonly been signaled out for the explication, are in the field of literature. These three, all of these three terms are the part of the type of learning, and that is types of the learning. And the detail is given one by one. One is about the transfer, which is to carry over of the previous performance or the knowledge to the subsequent learning. Is and the prior knowledge benefits the learning task, and secondly, the previous performance distribute the performance of the second task. And in second term was all about the as the second term that is known as the interference is all about the previous item is incorrectly transferred. Interference occurs when some data or some of the knowledge you acquired from the speaker, but that is transferred is in incorrect way. So with this, it is associated with the item to be learned. And the native language of the second learner is often positively transferred, in which the learner benefits from the facilitating effect of the first language. And last but not least was the our generalization. And in it, the items are subsumed, generalized under a high order categories for the meaningful retention. In second language learning, second language acquisition, our generalization is the process that occurs at the second language learner X within the target language. Actually, in it, I would give you a type of example that suppose think of a child that is little and he does not have any sense. Whenever you in our generalization, whenever you will give concept of the animal to that child, he will before giving him concept of the our concept of the animal, he will just think and he will be wondering whether which one is the dog and which one is the cat. And but after that, when our generalization will occur, much more he will think a number of times, then he will place and he will recognize both that where which one is the cat and which one is the dog. So yes, and there are also other terms, two other terms, inductive and deductive reasoning. Actually, these both are inductive and deductive reasoning are the parts of our generalization. And in inductive reasoning, we came to know that it goes from specific observation to the broader generalization in theory. Whereas in deductive reasoning, it goes from the more general information to the more specific. So it is do you know that can be it can be said that these both inductive and deductive reasonings are both of the important pillar aspects in the process of our generalization. Yes, and Peters in 1981 mentioned and points out that we are inclined too often to assume that a child's linguistics development proceeds from the part of whole, that is, children first learn sounds, then words, then sentences, and so forth. So this is the sequence in the last, and it does also make our sense clear. Thank you so much. It was my presentation's part. I would be calling Sadaf wait uh, for a minute. I think Sadaf, are you with us? She left a message to me that she is coming within a minute.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Hello, Sadaf.
Am I audible? Hello? Hello.
Hello, Pratap.
Yes, sir. Am I audible to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Nice. So my presentation part is language aptitude. We have the very first question that do certain people have a trick for learning foreign language? So, it may be, yeah, it may be, we can say, it may be no, because for a variety of casual factors, some people are indeed able to learn languages faster and more efficiently than others. So the one perspective of looking at such aptitude is the identification of a number of characteristics of successful language learners. So here are a few characteristics of successful learners. The very first one is the risk-taking behavior, memory efficiency, intelligent guessing, ambiguity tolerance, and so on. So these are the few of the many variables that have been cited in Robinson's book 2005 and Brown's in 1991 and many others. The second one is a modern language aptitude test that was given by John Carroll. So the MLAT Modern Language Aptitude Test requires perspective language learners to perform such tasks as learning numbers, discriminating sounds, detecting spelling clues, grammatical patterns, memorizing words, meaning, all either in one's native language, English, or utilizing words and morphemes from a constructed hypothetical language. So here we have aptitude is a complex of abilities that include, among others, processing speed, short and long memory, root memory, planning time, uh, adaptability, situational intelligence, and self-efficiency. That was given by Peter Robinson in his book. So can you change the slide, Cetral? Yeah, intelligence in the learning, in the language learning. The very first question that we have, what is intelligence? What kind of intelligence are related to foreign language learning? So the answer of the very first question is that the intelligence has traditionally been defined and measured in terms of linguistics and logical mathematical abilities. Intelligence may have little to do with one's success as a second language learner. People with a high IQ's intelligence content have proven to be more successful. Can you please go back? Thank you. Back. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Have proven to be more successful in acquiring second language. After all, the greatest barrier to second language learners is to boil down to a matter of memory. And in the sense that if you could remember everything you were ever taught or you ever heard, you would be a very successful language learner. Okay, now please change the slide, Safra. Thank you. So here are Howard Gardner in 1983. It was a controversial theory of intelligence that blew apart our traditional thought about IQ, intelligence content. So initially, Gardner described seven different intelligence, which, in his view, provided a much more comprehensive picture of intelligence. But later on, he also added one more intelligence in his book. So the very first one that we see are the following eight multiple intelligence are typically listed in Gardner's work. The very first one is the linguistic. Second one is logical, mathematical. Third one is musical. Actually, musical is the ability to perceive and create the pitch and rhythmic patterns. And fourth one is spatial. The ability to find one's way around an environment, to form mental images of reality, and to transfer them readily. Fifth one is the bodily kinesthetic, that is the fine motor movement or athletic prowess. The fourth one is the naturalistic. So the sensitivity to natural objects, such as we have seen the plants, animals, and the clouds, and so on. And seventh one is the interpersonal ability. That is an ability to understand others, how they feel, what motivates them, how they interact one another, and so on. So the it is the intrapersonal intelligence. The very first one the one is intrapersonal intelligence. So this is again one kind of ability to see oneself, to develop a sense of self-identification. Uh, self-identification. So there is quite clear difference between the two inter and the intrapersonal. The very first describe the other's ability, and the last one describe the one's own ability. So Gartner said by looking only at the first categories, we rule out a greater number of a human's mental ability. We see only a portion of the total capacity of human mind. Yeah. Can you please change the slide? Okay. In a similar style, Robert Sternberg, 19, also taking up the word of traditional intelligence measurement, he proposed three types of smartness. The very first one is componential ability, that is used for the measuring the analytical thinking. The second one is experiential ability, that is used for to engage in creative thinking, combining disparate experiences in insightful ways. And the third one is the contextual ability, street smartness that enables people to play the games of manipulating their environment, other situation in a strategic context, and so on. Change the slide. So we have here learning theories in action. So here we have two language teaching methods in contrast. The very first one is the audiolingual method. Other one is community language learner. So, two language teaching methods that emerged in the last century of language, maybe of particular interest in this regard. The audiolingual method is inspired by behavioristic principles, and the other one is community language learning, is a direct attempt to apply Carl Roger's theory, which are contrasted with each other. Please change the slide. So, we have audiolingual method. Fundamentally, this method was started with the outbreak of World War II, as we all know, because through this method, the USA Army tried to build the oral language skills of soldiers. That's why this method is also called the Army method. Okay. In this is a method for foreign language teaching, which emphasizes the teaching of listening and speaking before reading and writing. So mainly focus on the listening and the speaking skills rather than reading and writing. This method is a combination between the behavior psychology and linguistics and the linguistics. Please change the slide. We can say that the audiolingual method was fully grounded in linguistic and psychological theories. In the audiolingual method, the students first hear a language, later they speak the language, and after that they read and write in it. Mother tongue is discouraged in the classroom when this method is used. The audiolingual method does not learn lots of vocabulary. In this method, grammar is most important for the students. In other words, the student must repeat grammar patterns after the teacher. Yeah, please change the slide. So different method that is community language learning. The community language learning expressively constructed to put Roger's theory of learning into action, in which students and teachers join together to facilitate teacher learning in a context of valuing and prizing each individual in the group. So the teacher presence is not or is it the teacher's purpose limits and the boundaries. Rather, he works as a counselor. He works as a instructor. The teacher role is to center his or her attention on the client and journey. There is great for the students. Rather, they are he or she is counseling them. In the slide. So we have now we have its advantages and disadvantages. Community language learning has some advantages and disadvantages. The very first advantages I would like to read it that it creates a supportive group. Community language learning creates a supportive group for the students, and it allows students to initiate language. They start speaking language. And the third point is that it points out learning learning. So the very the set of method is that the teacher can become non-directive. Uh, for presentation. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, all, for listening us. It was our presentation. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you, was Sadaf and Sarfaraz presenting the topic of chapter 4. We still have the 40 minutes to what to ask questions and answers for discussion. So in chapter 4, the privilege, so we deal with the what three theories. One is called behaviorism, represented by Pavlov and Skinner, and then second cognitive, represented by Ausubel, and then last is the constructivism, represented by Carl Rogers. And also in this chapter, on the two theories, which is contrast applied in the two teaching method, that is the audiolingual method, representing behaviorism, and Carl Rogers, representing the what represented in the community language learning. Okay, now you can ask question or comments on the meeting chat, everyone, or directly in the two Sarfaraz and Sadaf. Yeah. So if we look at the map of the whole language teaching methods, so we can we can divide into three groups, three schools. So the first is called traditional ones. So we can start from GTM, grammar translation method, and then we have the oral approach and SLT, situation language teaching, and also audiolingual method. Oral approach was born in Britain, and then ALM was born in USA, in line with the World War II. And then the second group is called designer methods. Designer methods. So you could mention like silent way, and then total physical response TPR, Suggestopedia, and also the CLT, not communicative but community language learning. And the last group belongs to communicative approaches. So under that approach, so we have CLT, communicative language teaching. You have, let's say, like the cooperative language learning. You have the project-based learning, problem solving, and so on. So later for your teaching practice, and then you can choose one of the methods to practice or to have for your micro teaching. so that you in your teaching, and then I could see which method is it. Yeah. So not everyone is in the uniform or similar methods, but you may choose from several kinds of those methods. You can choose the traditional ones, or you can choose the designer methods, or you can choose under umbrella the communicative language teaching or communicative approaches. Okay, now the questions, please. So if we look again at the, let's say from the Carl Rogers, yeah. So if we refer to the, let's say like the audiolingual method or behaviorism, so teaching is still prescriptive. What does it mean? The teaching is prescriptive. In the eyes of Carl Rogers, prescriptive teaching against the person's freedom and dignity. What is meant by prescriptive teaching? Just like in the audiolingual method or in the oral approach or SLT in Britain or direct methods or village method. Prescriptive. Yeah. You know the meaning of prescriptive? Prescriptive teaching. Yeah. Any comments about what is meant by prescriptive teaching? The teaching which is prescriptive against persons' freedom and dignity. Against person freedom. Your freedom and also your dignity, the martabat. Hello, anyone? You know the meaning of prescribe? How do you say in Indonesian? In Indonesian?
But I think prescriptive, this is like the what's written by the doctor, right?
Yeah, right, yeah. So prescribe or prescriptive adjective, prescribe verb meaning resep, yeah, resep. So if you go to the doctor and then, well, you are ill, so you will be given you will given receipt or receipt, yeah, receipt. What is the noun of prescriptive? Prescription or?
Yes,
So
sir. Prescription.
yeah, for buying the medicine. That is the, so prescriptive teaching, yeah, is similar to when you are consulting with the doctor. So you will be given prescription list of what medicines, and then you buy at the medical store, yeah, the apotheke. Yeah.
Yes.
Meaning that you don't have any choice to. So it's a bit authoritarian, yeah, authoritarian, meaning so you have no choice On the other hand, in the Carl Rogers approach, that is the principle is far away from teaching. Yeah? So as Sarfaraz read in this presentation, yeah? So far away from teaching. Yeah? And towards learning. Yeah? Or put in more recent terms, transformative pedagogy. And away from teaching, that is teaching which is not prescriptive. Among other thing is what manifested in the community language learning. Can you tell me a bit how do you carry out when you carry out teaching method using CLL, yeah? CLL, community language learning? How do you carry out? How do you practice? If you have a class and then you try to apply CLL. Because the role of the teacher is different in the prescriptive teaching. So the role of the teacher is very dominant. Yeah, the teacher is the central point. But on the other hand, in the CLL, in the community language learning, so the teacher is a bit what back, drawn back a bit, meaning that you no longer as a central point, but you will be a kind of facilitator. So if we look at the layout of the class, so you will have the student sits in the circle, yeah. The chair is arranged in the circle, and then the teacher is a bit at the back of the circle, not in front. So here the teacher is no longer the central point, but as a facilitator, meaning being the whisperer of the students. But the drawback is it seems that the teaching process is not systematic because it is let's say if you refer to the books by Diana Larsen about the principles and techniques of language teaching, that's in the application of the theories, the practice. Yeah. So you check with that book in the materials. So first, a student, so it is also called teaching without without syllabus or without the syllabus is dealt later. So a student will mention a word in their first language and then the teacher will translate. So and then later the syllabus will be drawn from the inputs of the learners. So yes, different from the audiolingual method. But we also another Rogers theory. So we can refer to Paulo Freire. You know Paulo Freire is he is famous as for his book Pedagogy of the Oppressed. So in bahasa Indonesia, pendidikan untuk kaum tertindas. So in the Paulo Freire, it is kind of the empower, empowerment. Empower meaning memberdayakan. Like enforcement or empower, memberdayakan, empowerment from the students' potential, meaning learning is not just reading the books, reading ABCD, but also reading the world. Yeah. So the principle is in the education of the oppressed. Yeah. So you could check also in the grounds. From reading the word, yeah, to reading the world. So here is the phrase, from reading the word to reading the world. Paulo Freire's The Education of the Oppression. Of the Oppressed, sorry. Ya. Pendidikan untuk kaum tertindas. Okay, anyone would like to comment concerning the phrase? Dari membaca kata ke membaca dunia. What does it mean? From reading the world to reading the world. By Paulo Freire, yeah, in his book The Education of the Oppressed. He is a Brazilian, yeah, and the Brazilian professor. So Western education or is afraid of his book because it will disrupt their establishment. Yeah. So the point is to make the students aware about what do you want to say, Mas Hakim? Anyone would like to comment about? So you can check in the gadget, yeah, about the Paulo Freire. Yeah. Besides the John Dewey, yeah, from USA, American educator. John Dewey also he uses the critical method in his teaching. Yeah. So establishing the university and the university elementary school. Universitas Pendidikan Dasar, meaning that the campus within the campus. Yeah. So using his new method, even though some or many of his colleagues were against his new idea about critical method in his teaching for the children, because the meaning the university in elementary school, teaching the children. Yeah. So similar to Paulo Freire, meaning to make the students aware of the environments. So in this world, there are still many, let's say, like what discrimination, injustice, inequality. Yeah. Just like the siapa itu Martin King Luther ya, about his famous speech I Have a Dream ya, against the white supremacy, concerning the discrimination for many years or for many decades or even many ages. Yeah. So if you read the American story about the school just for black, the school just for white, the beaches just for the white, and the beaches just for the black gitu ya. Also, you cannot go to church for the white people. So Martin Luther King were fighting for the equality. Okay, back to the CLL, yeah. So please read again in the Richards and Rogers books, the second edition or first edition, so you could see how you carry out the CLL or for the application in the Diana Larson's, the principles and techniques in language teaching, meaning the how to apply some teaching methods. Okay, any other comments about the chapter 4? So of the whole theories or language teaching methods, so you could say that the old one is obsolete, but also you could say they are still applicable, yeah, up to now. So depending on if you are teaching from the lower levels, let's say like English for children or for secondary school students, so behaviorism or behavioristic